Welcome. Welcome to the Rave Waves Spotlight Show featuring our wonderful and lovely Robbie. Robbie Cheadle. Robbie, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. This is my first show, and I couldn't think of a better person to have as a first person to talk with as you. So how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Joy, and thank you. That's a lovely welcome. I'm pleased to be here.
Listeners, and to all of the people in the gallery, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to raise your hand and we'll recognize you and bring you in, and then you can unmute yourself. But until you have a question, everybody will be muted. Okay? So let's move along. Robbie, you are a full-time writer? Are you?
No, I'm not that lucky, Pat. And two young sons. Well, they're not very young, they're teenagers.
Okay. So if you're not a full-time writer, are you a serious writer or a hobby writer?
Well, I think I'm more than a hobby writer, because I do take it quite seriously and I put as much time as possible and a lot of energy into trying to learn the craft. So I attend writing conferences and I try and learn. But unfortunately, I won't be a full-time writer for a while.
Okay, but is that one of your desires?
Yes, in the future. At the moment, it isn't economically viable for me to write full-time, but okay. I'm hoping in the future I'll get there.
So tell us about I know you've written many books. Well, not many, you've written several books. 9 books, you've written a lot of children's books. I've got 2 or 3 of your books on chocolate. I haven't used any of the recipes, but every time I ride by one of our wonderful bakeries over here, I think of you and stop at the bakery. Tell us.
This is good, Kat.
So tell us a little bit about why you, because I noticed, and you use 2 different names when you're writing your adult books and the children's books. Why do you do that? Why did you decide to use 2 different names?
Well, I was concerned when I started writing fiction for older people, because I tend to write about paranormal and can even lean towards horror. I did not want someone to pick up a book like that, thinking they were buying a children's book or something light. So I have a couple of friends in the blogging world, and I saw that they had done a similar thing where they'd used a different version of their name for two different types of writing. So that was the route I took. I was originally going to write under my maiden name, but my husband marched in protest. So I ended up with
right on for him. He wanted to be a part of the joy.
He did.
And is that why you also have 2 different social media platforms? And I must say, I admire you. I have problems with 1. And you have
it
2 Twitters. You have 2 fake. I mean, you know, how is that the reason you have that? Is it difficult?
Because I personally don't find it difficult to manage, but I am used to I work in corporate finance. So I work on sort of 2 or 3 computers and a screen in a normal day. So for me, it wasn't that difficult. So I have 2 different computers. One I use for Bake and Write and Robbie's Inspiration, and the other I use for Roberta Writes and my other Twitter account. So then I don't get muddled over the people and the comments, etc. So it is quite time consuming, but I really enjoy blogging. I love people. I like Twitter. It's a hobby. Well, it's more than a hobby, but it's very relaxing and a contrast to my day job.
it's part of the job as a writer. You accept that that's a part of getting your work out there, getting to know the people that's reading your work, I think also.
Yes, that's why I started, but it's more than that. You develop friends and relationships. It's more than just for marketing my books. I am following some people who aren't writers, who are perhaps artists and probably wouldn't read my books, but I really enjoy people and what they do. And my favorite blogs are the ones that tell me about people's lives and how they spend their day.
Okay. And so, Robbie, when did you start writing? At what age? I mean, don't tell me your age. I don't want to. I know we don't want to know the age. When did you start writing?
So I suppose I always did write when I think about it, because as a girl, I can remember being very inspired. I read a book. It was by the same lady that wrote Anne of Green Gables, which most people know. And she wrote another series called Emily of New Moon. And in that book, Emily's father is a poet, and she aspires to be a poet like her father, and she writes poetry. And so after I read that book, I started having a journal. So I was probably about 10, and I would write bits of poetry in it and little bits of depictive writing, little descriptions, usually something I knew nothing about. And so I always did that, and I had a diary when I was in high school, in my 20s. And then when I actually went into when I made my choice to become a CA, I always was the one who ended up doing all the reports. So there's a lot of reports that you do as an accountant. So I did that, and then I was very lucky. I had an opportunity to do some publications. So I'm very interested in Africa and African countries. So I've done a lot of research on investment into Africa, how readiness for the fourth industrial revolution. I've attended conferences to have panel discussions with leaderships on how to prepare, how best to prepare for the future. And I wrote about 7 or 8 publications along those lines. And that taught me a lot, because it taught me how to look at editing, how to, I think, accept a commentary and feedback, because when you write, you will always get feedback. And so I learned that was the way you grew as a writer, and the whole process of getting a book out. So that was how I started. And then in 2015, I started writing little books and poems with my son and my nieces. And from there, it sort of grew, and I got the idea of writing a blog, which I enjoyed. And I submitted my little books that Michael and I had written to a publisher I knew in the UK. She was recommended by a fellow South African, a colleague here. And I sent it off, and she liked the idea. So from there, we were published, and it's just gone from there.
And that's the way the door opened, slowly.
Yes, and the obsession started.
Do you have a specific time that you like to write? Are you a mornings person or an evenings person, or when do you write? Do you make time to write? Do you write every day?
I don't write on my books every day. But I do write posts. I tend to probably take on too much. I know I do that. So I can rush things, and I'm trying to sort of slow down a bit and take a bit more care, and maybe not do as much, and do it with a little bit more keener eye in blogging and other kinds of writing. My books, I try and write on a Friday. I'm supposed to work a 4-day week, but I've been on a very big project, so it's been a 7-day week for quite a few months now. But I do try and write on a Friday for a couple of hours in the morning. I'm a morning person, and every Saturday and Sunday, if I'm not working, I have been for the last 3 or 4 months, but if I'm not, then I always write. So I do make time for it.
Fantastic. Then let's move to your book, your new book, the poetry book, the one that you have on tour now, because I have been impressed. I'm pulling up my iPad because I purchased your book, and I have been impressed with a lot of the poetry. And one of them that has impressed me tremendously is Some People. I think that is absolutely fantastic. I like the way you start with some people mark this imperfect world just by being, make it a better place. And I said, gee whiz, that's beautiful. And then encouraging, selfless, and enthusiastic, they're a buffer against the rat race. And I said, wow, yeah, that is some people, very few. And I really like that poem. There are more that I like, but that poem hit me. And then I read Who You Dedicated To. You talked about Chunky, Chunky Young. And I said, what a beautiful tribute. He must have been a beautiful person, that you could come to touch the emotions of people by putting what he was in verse. That was beautiful. So tell us about your writing, about Open a New Door. Talk about that.
So I just would like to comment on that particular poem. So that was, Chunky Young was a very extraordinary person. He was a minister at the church we attend. And I wrote that poem because he died of he had a massive stroke and died doing actually what he loved, because he was conducting a wedding at the time. He was extremely popular and quite a leader in South Africa. He established quite a few schools in Zimbabwe, and the church supports those schools. So he was very interested in education. So I liked working with him. And at the time I was running the Sunday school. And so when he died, it was actually a terrible shock for the community and for me. And that was why I wrote that poem, and I read it at his funeral, which they had a huge funeral for him. It was attended by hundreds of people, a very popular person. So that's just a bit about that particular poem. A lot of the poems that are in that book, poetry for me is the voice of emotion more so than prose. And
it is. I agree.
Yeah, I don't spend as much. My poetry tends to come out in the form that it remains in. So I don't usually do a lot of editing. I don't profess to be a marvelous poet, but I think there is a sort of raw emotion in those poems. And there is a lot in my country, and I'm sure it's the same in other countries, but we do have a lot of poverty here, and it's quite visible. And well, it is visible to me. It's not necessarily visible to others, which is something I've noticed, that people tend to, beggars and people in need can almost become invisible to people. And so when I used to drive to work, which I obviously haven't done for a year, I had sort of a number of people I used to help, and you get to know them, and they're very cheerful. You know, our population here are very nice people. I consider myself.
Yeah, and one of them you talk about the guy under the bridge, the young men under the bridge, and then another one, you were on your way to work. Another poem was you were on your way to work, and this guy had a skateboard with a bag of plastic. He had collected plastic. And I was thinking at that time, she's very much aware of what is going on around her. You don't close your eyes, you open your eyes to see what's happening. And I think that's the job of any writer, a poet, especially a poet. We're supposed to show it. We're supposed to show the people so they can understand that. You know, it's just not having a brand new car. There are people that don't have that. I love this book. I really do.
Well, thank you, Pat. I'm very pleased because this book is quite special. It's got a lot of poems that I would like people to read because I think it tells about my country and my people. And, you know, that's nice. I want the world to know about
It's not only your country, though. That tells, you know, when I read that poem, I thought about the people in Greece now, the immigrants in Lesbos, all of the immigrants that are now sitting outside of the U.S. Borderline trying to get into the country. It's your poetry. I find this book of poetry, especially your poems, I find them universal. They fit. You're talking about humanity. That's the way I see it. And I really read your poetry, and I'm quite sure I'm going to read it again, and maybe I'll probably memorize one or two. But
it's good. It's good for your brain if you memorize poetry. It stops dementia. I read.
Yeah, you know, two of my favorites are Etna St. Vincent Millay. I love Tennyson. Tennyson, I think, is he is my great favorite. I can hear him. I can hear sunset and evening stars. I love Tennyson. I love Blake. He was beautiful. William Blake. I love poetry. Robert Frost is I don't think anybody could do him. I think The Road Not Taken, when I first heard that, at the age of 16, I knew I was going to travel that road that was not traveled by. Poetry does things to people.
It does.
So, I'm getting us off the theme. Let me get us back on the theme. Robbie, you have been in RRBC 2 years?
Just under 2 years. It feels like it's been a long time, but it actually has only been about a year, just over a year and a half.
How do you feel about the organization?
Well, I think it's a lovely organization. It's got lots of wonderful people very inspiring people, and people who speak out and say things and address truths. And I think I feel like I belong because although I think I'm quite a quiet person. I have stuff to say, and it's not always within the flow of what other people agree with. And I like the fact that I think at Rave Review Book Club, people can say what they believe, which I like, because I think that's often not the case in life. So I think it's a wonderful organization, and I'm enjoying the books. I've got books of everyone on this call on my Kindle. So I'm trying to get back to reading once I get this job out of the way. But yeah, I don't think you could really ask for more than a club that is international, has lovely people, and is brave.
And do you feel like you receive the support that you need for your books and for your growing also, not just for selling your books, but for growth as an author? Do you feel like you're being supported enough?
Yes, so I think that growth is something. Growth, you have to be open to. You have to be open to other people's views and thoughts and feedback, because that is how you grow. That's how you learn. That's always been how people have learned. So I think there is a good mix of that. And I think there's also jolly good times, which is really nice. And I think we have nice times and we do fun things, which it's all part of the fun, because it can't all be hard work. You know, it's also got to be fun.
You're preaching to the gallery, girlfriend.
Yeah, we had such a good time over Christmas. It made such a difference to my lockdown Christmas. And then I think as far as support goes, look, I'm going to give you a bit of a roundabout answer. So support is something that has to be earned. And I think Nani does say that. That is her, I think, one of her primary points. And that is so. It's like trust and many things in life. You have to earn them. You can't just sit back and expect others to do for you. You have to embrace what's on offer. And I think there is the opportunities to do that in this club. But it's up to individuals to embrace that opportunity.
Exactly, exactly. I so agree with you. Wanda had a question. I haven't had my chat thing open. Sorry, people, this is my first time. You can kill me afterwards. Wanda, did you want to say something? You have to unmute yourself.
Robbie, what is the name of the person that you mentioned that you wrote the poem about, the special person? Because there's a musician from South Africa. Her name is Sharon Katz. And I believe that she mentioned him one time when she was touring around this area. She's based in Philadelphia now, but she tours all over and she goes back and forth to South Africa all the time. What is his name again?
His name is Chunky Young.
Okay.
And he probably is very well known because he was quite famous in South Africa, and he was a very brave person. So he was very much for people's human rights. He was very much for gay rights and very much in support of education. So he had a lot of reach.
Yeah, I think that is the person. Sharon runs a thing called the Peace Train, where she takes children throughout countries and sings about peace, and Sharon herself is gay. So I think that very well might be the same person. I'm going to ask her about that. Okay. I know her quite well.
Interested because he was just an amazing person. It was a very sad thing for our community when he died.
Well, and the other thing that Shirley says, that when she thinks about South Africa, she thinks about Nelson Mandela. And I think about when people say it's too hard to vote in this country, I think about people who walked for 24, 48 hours when Mandela was running for office so that they could vote. And when I think about people saying that it's too hard to vote, I tell them about, well, it wasn't too hard for people to vote in South Africa when they walked for 2 days so that they could vote. And I say, give me a better excuse. So I think that South Africa has many lessons that we all can learn. Thank you for writing about things in South Africa.
Thank you, Wanda. Everybody thinks about Nelson Mandela, Shirley. He is a very famous person. Yeah, I mean, he's an icon in South Africa, and we have a celebration every year on his birthday, and people give of their time and do make contributions for upliftment.
I remember when he got out of jail, when he was released. And I was here in Germany, I'll be very honest with you. They were dancing and I was too. I was dancing.
Everybody here was dancing too. And when we actually had our election, I remember watching the queue. And everybody was very enthusiastic. It was a lovely day.
Yes, it was. It was very lovely. We have we're running short of time. We have a sponsor for this show, and Linnea Tana. Linnea, am I pronouncing your name correctly? Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, it's Linnea, but you are pronouncing it correctly.
Okay, and look, Linnea is sponsoring the show today, Apollo's Raven. And Yanni, would you please run our commercial? can say I have both of those books. I have the poetry book, Open a Door by Robbie, and I also have Linnea's book. I have not read it yet, but my TBR list is going to start getting shorter one day because I'm reading, but books take longer than short stories.
I love short stories.
I love short stories. But I have both of those books and I can recommend them. I always say I like to read books that give me an outside look or an inside look into what's going on in the world and in past, regardless of whether it's historical or present, contemporary. A good book can always relax me, regardless. So, Robbie, give us we have 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes now to tell us, what do you think about somebody reading your Open a Door and giving you a 2-star review? What would you do?
Well, I have had 2-star reviews, Pat. So it wouldn't be the first time I got a 2-star review. So the first 2-star review I got, it was a bit of a shock because we all think our books are marvelous, let's be honest. And
That's true.
I realized that, there's different kinds of reviews. So it really depends. Someone might read your book who just really isn't into that genre. And there's not really much you can do about that. I mean, if someone doesn't like poetry and so therefore, they write a bad review. But I think, it depends. If the review cites errors or issues with the book, then I think there is a learning to be had from that. So I do appreciate that. I've always been a person who is very open to feedback, and I do try, not always successful, but I do try and embrace that feedback. And in my job, I mean, your work gets ripped to pieces, to be honest. I mean, I work with lawyers and they just change everything you write. So I don't really take them personally. I look to see if I can improve and if there's something useful to me there. And if there isn't, I let it go, basically.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I find that a fantastic approach. One of the things that we learn to do if we want to be a writer that I think touch the heart, we become vulnerable. So we're vulnerable. You are vulnerable as a writer. And because that's your baby out there.
Right.
It's like a kid. And we have to learn, just like people learn with raising children, that you have to let them go. So when you put that book out there, you're letting it go so you can grow. And I think it's a very, very nice way of explaining how you deal with critique.
Great response, Robbie. It was really a great response. Pat, may I jump in for just a second just to share?
Yes.
I'm not sure if anybody has taken notice of our sidebar, Week at a Glance, this week on the site. John Fioravanti has a quote, and his quote is, "Dishonest reviews say more about the reviewer than the book. Honest reviews are all about your book." And I say that because when people are making excuses for the reviews they've received that they didn't like, they say, or their friends always say, the reviews are all about that person. That person has to have an issue with you, or they're jealous of you, or whatever. No. Unless you know for a fact that it's a troll trolling your book, dishonest reviews say more about the reviewer than the book.
Exactly.
It's more about that person leaving that dishonest review. Honest reviews are all about your book. So let's remember that. Thank you, Pat. I'm going to step out of your show.
Thank you, Nani. So we've come to an end. Well, I'm over my time, but we've come to an end. And I would like to thank you guys, girls, ladies, for being a part of my first time.
For the first time at Parks, you did great.
I
You did so good.
You were splendid, Pat. Very well done.
But you
Yeah, that
guys
was
made
good.
it
That was
so
really
much
nice.
easier for me. It's always easy when you meet friendly faces that are willing to sit and stay there and hang in there with you. And Robbie, I couldn't have had a better honor than to really have you as the first person, because I read your poetry. You know, I bought this book. I had it on my iPad. I bought it yesterday evening after I got the name from Paula. And I have just been, oh, wow, oh, wow, oh, wow. There are one or two that I didn't say, oh, wow, to, because I thought about the pain that I experienced as a teenager in my puberty. My puberty years were not easy and they were not funny. And I wrote that on Carl's blog because you have that poem on Carl's blog. I said, well, I don't miss those years. I don't want to see them. I don't need to repeat them. Just let them just stay where they are. And I'm happy now. But it was so nice having you all here. It was so nice having the chance. I thank you. I thank Nani for asking me to be the host for today, because it was something that I said, oh, wow. But you all made it easy.
Great job, Pat, and my dog enjoyed his cameo.
But you tell your dog he can join the show anytime. And I just want to say thanks to everyone and have a very nice day. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves.
And you too.
We got a lot of
Bye,
books to
everyone.
write.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nani.
It doesn't help
Bye-bye.
that Robbie's smiling face pops up. You know, she's so easy to interview because you see her face and it's so warm and
Yes.
it's soft. And
You're going to make me blush.
amazing guest. So that always makes it easy. You guys have a great weekend.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Nani.
everyone. Thanks, Nani.